The wind scraped against the rusted gates of the old Carson County prison as the sun bled over the desert. A pickup truck stopped, dust rising like ghosts from another time. Inside, Farmer Henry Calloway gripped the steering wheel, staring at the crumbling towers he'd just bought for the price of a broken tractor. He thought he was buying silence. He didn't know silence could scream. The first night, the floors whispered. Chains rattled even though there were no chains left. The air smelled like iron and old rain. Henry walked through empty cells, boots echoing against concrete, his lantern shaking in his hand. Every shadow looked like someone waiting. Somewhere deep inside, a door slammed by itself, one that shouldn't even exist. Behind the laundry block, Henry found a padlocked hatch buried under dust and stone. The lock was snapped long ago, as if someone wanted out, not in. A cold draft blew from the crack, carrying a sound, and not wind, not pipes, but breathing, slow, human. He whispered into the dark, "Hello?" The breath answered with a whisper that wasn't his own. He should have left then, but something about that tunnel, carved beneath a place meant to hold monsters, pulled him closer. His lantern flickered as he stepped inside, walls trembling with old echoes. The deeper he went, the more the air changed, thick with the smell of damp earth and something sweeter, decay wrapped in perfume. At the end of the tunnel, the light died completely. He reached forward, fingers brushing against cold stone carved with numbers. Not dates, not names, just one word, etched deep into the wall. Return. And in that darkness, something returned his touch. Henry Calloway wasn't a man who scared easy. He'd lived through dust storms that swallowed entire fields and winters, that froze cattle where they stood. But after his wife died in childbirth, the silence on his farm turned heavier than any storm. That's why, when he saw the old prison listed for pennies, he didn't see ruin, he saw escape, a place where the ghosts in his head might finally go quiet. He sold everything he owned, tools, fences, even his late wife's piano. The townsfolk thought he'd lost his mind. "That place ain't meant for the living," the storekeeper warned, eyes low. Henry smiled like he believed in logic, but deep down, something in that warning thrilled him. Maybe because he didn't feel entirely alive himself. Maybe because he hoped that in the bones of that prison, he'd find a piece of her still breathing. The drive across Nevada stretched endless, sand, sky, and nothing in between. By the time he reached the iron gates, the horizon had swallowed the sun. The prison looked alive under moonlight, as if it had been waiting. The air smelled like burnt oil and dry rot. Henry touched the gate, and it opened without a sound, like it recognized him. He didn't notice that behind him, the dust from his tires settled in perfect lines, footprints that weren't his. Inside, he set up camp in the warden's office. The desk was covered in ledgers, brittle with age. Each line carried a date and a single word: transfer. No names, no crimes, no destinations. Just transfer. The last entry was dated October 5th, 1940, the same week the prison was officially closed. That night, Henry dreamed of footsteps pacing outside his door, slow, measured, and too deliberate to be wind. When he woke, the door was open, but the lock was still on the inside. By the third night, Henry stopped pretending he wasn't hearing things. The walls clicked like old bones. The pipes moaned like someone trying to speak through water. The hatch behind the laundry room still waited, black mouth open, cold breath spilling out. He told himself it was just airflow, just the desert playing tricks. But when he left a lantern at the entrance, it was gone by morning. In its place, wet footprints leading back to the warden's office. He followed them. Step by step, they stopped at the ledger. The same ledger that now had a new entry written in fresh ink. Same looping handwriting, same single word: transfer. But this time it was followed by a name: H. Calloway. His hand shook as he touched the page. The ink was still damp, and yet the bottle on the desk was dry. The pen broken decades ago. Henry felt the walls hum. Not a sound, but a pressure, like the air before lightning hits. He turned, certain he wasn't alone. In the doorway, a figure stood, pale, head tilted, eyes hollow, as if carved from smoke. For a heartbeat, Henry thought it was his wife, the same shape, the same shadow of her smile. Then the figure whispered, "You shouldn't have opened it." The voice came from everywhere at once. He stumbled back, knocking the ledger to the floor. Papers fluttered open, revealing pages he hadn't seen before. Drawings of tunnels beneath the prison, circles marking intersections, notes written in trembling script: "Keep it sealed. No exits, no returns." His lantern flickered. He thought he saw movement in the sketch, tunnels shifting like veins under skin. Henry ran to the hatch, desperate to see it again, to prove it was just imagination. But when he reached it, the hatch was gone. The wall was solid brick. Only the sound of breathing remained, now coming from inside the wall itself. Henry didn't sleep that night. He sat in the warden's chair, staring at the sealed wall where the hatch used to be. The air buzzed with a faint hum, like electricity buried under stone. When dawn came, he stepped outside for the first time in days. The desert stretched quiet and endless, except for something new. In the sand behind the main building, tire tracks appeared out of nowhere, leading to a fenced lot that hadn't existed yesterday. He followed them, boots crunching over frost and dust. Beyond the fence stood 3 prison vans, half sunk into the earth. Their doors were chained shut from the inside. On the windshield of the first van, someone had written with a finger in the dust, "She's waiting." Henry's chest tightened. The handwriting, it was hers. The same looping letters from the old notes she used to leave in his lunchbox. He whispered her name, and the wind carried it back, warped, drawn out, like it was learning how to say it for the first time. He pried open the nearest van. The smell hit him first, iron, wet leather, and something sweet, like old flowers. Inside, the seats were gone. In their place, a stairway descended into the ground, built from mismatched stone. A tunnel again. The same style, same curve, same damp breath. Only this one wasn't hidden, it was inviting. He hesitated at the entrance, fingers trembling. Behind him, the prison groaned, as if warning him not to go. He lit his last lantern and began to descend. The air grew colder, denser. Every step down echoed like a heartbeat, slow and heavy. The deeper he went, the more he realized this wasn't beneath the prison anymore. The stone walls were newer, smoother, lined with scratches shaped like letters. Some formed words. Transfer complete. At the bottom of the stairs, he found a wooden door bolted shut with iron nails. A voice from behind it whispered, "Henry, you came back." It wasn't her voice anymore. Henry froze, the lantern shaking in his hand. That voice had the rhythm of his wife's, the pauses, the trembling gentleness. But every note of warmth was gone. He stepped closer to the wooden door. It pulsed faintly, as if something behind it was breathing in sync with him. "Who are you?" he asked. Silence, then 3 knocks. Slow, deliberate, measured. He knocked back once. The sound that returned wasn't a knock. It was a heartbeat answering his own. He searched the tunnel for clues, forcing his mind to work instead of fear. The walls bore fresh carvings, dates, symbols, and what looked like tally marks. Some reached the thousands. In one corner, a broken tag hung from a nail, its metal dull with age. He brushed off the dirt and read the engraving. Inmate 42, Calloway, H. His stomach twisted. The tag was his name, his number, but he had never been a prisoner. Henry carried the tag to the surface, sunlight stinging his eyes. He went straight to the old records room, file drawers warped by time. Most were empty, eaten by rats and moisture. But one file survived, locked in a small safe under the floorboards. He pried it open with a crowbar. Inside, a photo, a grainy image of prisoners lined up against a wall, their faces blurred, but one stood clear. It was him, same face, same scar on the jaw from the barbed wire accident when he was 18. Only the photo was dated 1928. The papers beneath it told of experiments conducted in the prison before its closure. Terms like transference, containment, and return protocol repeated over and over. Each prisoner had one label beside their name, still active. Henry's name was there too, active. He dropped the papers, his pulse racing. If this was true, if the tunnel wasn't built to escape but to return, then what had he been transferred from? And worse, what was waiting for him to finish the process? By morning, the desert sky had turned copper, and the air hung heavy, waiting. Henry packed what little he had, food, matches, and the ledger, ready to leave. But when he reached the main gate, the lock was gone, replaced by a thick iron chain looped from the outside. Someone had sealed him in. Panic crawled through his chest, but the rational part of him counted. Supplies for maybe 3 days, water for 1. After that, it wouldn't matter. He returned to the warden's office to plan. The clock on the wall, long dead, was ticking again. The hands spun backward faster and faster, then stopped at 12:01. Every night since, at exactly 12:01, the whispering began again. He wrote it down, every sound, every word, until one phrase repeated clear enough to understand. 4 nights left. A countdown. a sentence, a promise. Determined to find a way out, before time ran out, Henry broke into the lower levels. The air grew colder with each step, lights dead for decades flickering to life as he passed. The generator room was still running impossibly, the dials showing dates instead of pressure. October 5th, 1940, October 6th, 7th. The final line blinked faintly. October 9th, 4 days from now. His deadline. He marked each corridor with chalk, leaving arrows to trace his steps. But when he circled back, the marks were gone, replaced by scratches spelling return again. The tunnels were changing, breathing, rearranging themselves like they didn't want him to find the exit. By the time he reached the central hall, his lantern was dying. The sound came again, the slow heartbeat he'd heard behind the wooden door. Only now it echoed through every wall. It was counting with him. 4 beats. 3. 2. The hum grew louder until it matched his pulse, as if the prison itself was keeping time with his life. By the second night of the countdown, Henry's exhaustion had turned into fever. Every sound twisted itself into words, every shadow into faces. He stopped trusting his eyes until he found the fresh footprints in the dust. Bare feet, small, a woman's. They led from the chapel to the generator room, vanishing near the metal door marked Sub-Level 3. That door had been welded shut when he arrived. Now it hung slightly open, like it had been waiting. He pushed it, hinges screaming. The stench rolled out, mildew, rust, and something faintly floral. He covered his mouth, stepping inside. The corridor beyond was lined with cells, but these weren't made for prisoners. They were clean, clinical. Each had a single chair bolted to the floor and strange copper wires running into the walls. On the far end, a large mirror, or maybe glass, separated the hallway from another room filled with identical chairs. Some were occupied. He stepped closer, lantern trembling. The figures on the other side weren't moving, but they were breathing. Rows of men and women, pale still, dressed in uniforms identical to the ones in the photo he'd found. Each had the same scar running along the jaw. His scar. He counted 13 of them. Every one of them was him. Henry stumbled back, bile rising. The whispering started again, this time coming from the reflection. The version of him behind the glass opened its eyes. "You're late," it said. "The transfer doesn't wait for doubt." The glass trembled. A crack spread across it like lightning. He turned to run, but the door behind him slammed shut. The lights flickered and his reflection smiled, not with malice but pity. "If you leave," it said, "she stays. You know that." His wife's voice echoed faintly behind the words, overlapping, pleading. The heartbeat started again, slower now, deeper, like something enormous was waking under the floor. And for the first time, Henry realized it wasn't counting down to his death. It was counting down to his arrival. Henry's reflection vanished as the glass shattered inward, shards floating mid-air before falling soundless to the floor. The hum beneath the prison grew steady, a rhythm, patient and powerful, syncing with his every heartbeat. He pressed his back to the wall, breathing hard, whispering his wife's name like a prayer or an apology. Somewhere below, a door opened with a deep, metallic sigh. Whatever waited down there had just invited him closer. He followed the sound, gripping the lantern until his knuckles went white. The steps spiraled deep beneath Sub-Level 3, each one colder than the last. On the walls, new words appeared in chalk. 3 nights left. The letters glowed faintly, pulsing in time with the sound from below. His breath came out in clouds. The air smelled like rain and iron. He whispered, "Where are you?" And the dark whispered back, "Closer than you think." He reached a cavern lit by weak blue lights dangling from frayed wires. At its center stood an enormous machine, half generator, half altar, with a chair surrounded by copper coils. The air shimmered with static. A recording clicked on, grainy, broken by static. Experiment 47, transfer failed, subject unstable, retain host until cycle completion. Henry's voice answered from the recording, terrified. "She wasn't supposed to take my place." He stumbled back, the truth clawing its way through him. His wife hadn't died, she had been transferred. And now the prison wanted to finish what it started. The machine whined back to life, electricity crawling across the floor like living light. Before the next part of his story unfolds, take a second and tell me where you're listening from, your city and your country. And don't forget to leave your like so this story keeps reaching more people. Because what happens next will decide whether Henry escapes or becomes the next prisoner. Henry turned. Someone stood behind him. She wore his wife's dress, and his face. Henry's mind fractured between terror and recognition. The woman, his wife's figure, his own face, stepped into the light, her movements too smooth, too deliberate. "You left me in the dark," she whispered, voice echoing through both throats at once. "Now we share the same body." The words weren't threat nor mercy. They were fact. The hum of the machine rose behind her, steady and alive, like something feeding. He turned and ran. The tunnels bent in impossible directions, corridors stretching, shrinking, pulsing like veins. Each step sent a vibration through the floor, the same heartbeat that had haunted him since the first night. The air grew hot, the lights dimmed, and with every turn he heard her, no, its footsteps matching his, perfectly synced. When he stopped, it stopped. When he breathed, it breathed. He burst into the chapel, moonlight spilling through broken stained glass. The floor was covered in sand now, desert sand, as if the outside had swallowed the prison whole. He tried the door, but beyond it was only darkness, endless and alive. From somewhere within, her voice floated closer. "You were never supposed to leave. You were supposed to return." The word echoed like a command. His reflection in the shattered altar glass moved a split second late, then smiled. Desperate, Henry smashed the lantern against the wall. Flames crawled across the floor, licking the old pews, the walls, the ceiling. Smoke rose, thick and grey, but the fire didn't burn the figure following him. It moved through it, untouched. The heat grew unbearable. The flames twisted upward, forming shapes, faces, all his faces, dozens of him screaming the same words. Transfer complete. Henry fell to his knees, choking as the chapel roof groaned above. The figure stopped a few feet away, reached out its hand, and said gently, "It's not death, Henry. It's memory. Come back before the clock stops." The last thing he heard before fainting was the ticking again, louder, faster. 2 nights left. When Henry woke, the fire was gone. The chapel stood whole again, the walls unburned, the air thick with dust and the faint smell of ozone. Only the scorch marks on his hands proved it had been real. His body ached as if dragged miles, though the floor beneath him hadn't moved. He looked at the altar, the glass now perfectly smooth, showing one reflection, but not his. It was her, smiling, waiting. He stumbled outside, but the desert had changed. The horizon was gone. Sand stretched into darkness, the sky a swirl of colorless clouds. Every direction looked the same, until he noticed them, faint lights flickering far away like lanterns buried under the ground. The tunnels. They had reached the surface. The prison wasn't underground anymore. It was spreading. Henry ran back toward the main building, but the gate had vanished, replaced by another arch of stone carved with words that glowed faintly in the dark. Cycle incomplete. Beneath it, numbers etched deep. 2. His countdown wasn't just time, it was transformation. The hum beneath the earth grew louder, deeper, alive. It called him by name. He followed it to the generator chamber, where the machine now pulsed with light. The copper coils glowed red-hot, symbols spinning above them like burning halos. On the chair sat a body, his body, eyes open, chest rising and falling in slow rhythm. The heartbeat he'd heard wasn't from the walls. It was from him. 2 versions, one decaying, one waiting to be filled. He stepped closer, drawn by something ancient, magnetic. His other self turned its head slightly, lips moving without sound. Then a whisper filled the room, from everywhere at once. "You started this. You have to finish it." Henry realized he had no way back, because there was no before anymore, only after, only what he chose to become in these last 2 nights. Henry sat beside the humming machine, sweat running cold down his spine. His other self sat motionless in the chair, eyes open but unfocused, chest rising with mechanical rhythm. The wires that ran into its skull pulsed faintly, like veins filled with light. Every instinct screamed to destroy it, but another voice, his own, echoing from somewhere deep, whispered, "If you break it, you break yourself." He paced the room, trying to think, trying to anchor his mind in something real. The ledger, the files, the word that had followed him since the beginning, transfer. If the machine moved consciousness, maybe it could be reversed. If his wife's mind had been trapped somewhere inside the system, maybe he could pull her out. But to do that, he'd have to finish what the warden started. Reconnect the wires, turn the current back on, and survive whatever came next. He gathered tools from the storage room, pliers, copper wire, a cracked fuse. The notes he found beside the machine described the process in fragments: synchronize pulse, stabilize host, open tunnel. Every line ended the same way: one must stay. The cost of the exchange. A body for a body. He clenched his jaw, forcing himself to breathe. He'd already lost her once. If this worked, maybe he could bring her back, even if it meant losing himself for good. He rebuilt the circuit slowly, following the hum like a compass. Each spark bit at his fingers. Each flicker of light showed glimpses of her face in the static. She was calling from somewhere between worlds, her voice distant but clear. "Henry, don't finish it. Please. It doesn't bring back what you think." The wires hummed louder, answering her with the sound of thunder trapped in metal. He sat in the second chair, strapping himself in, the coils vibrating under his skin. The machine began to breathe again, pulling air like lungs. As the lights dimmed, he whispered, "If one must stay, let it be me." Then the switch flipped by itself. The surge hit Henry like a storm tearing through bone. Every light in the chamber flared white, then red, then darkness. His body convulsed, as if the machine were rewriting him, each pulse digging memories out of his skull and throwing them into the air like sparks. He saw her face flash before him, laughing in the field, calling his name, then crying behind glass as the transfer took her. Every memory blended until he couldn't tell which belonged to whom. The other body, his reflection, began to move. Its head jerked forward, eyes rolling back, mouth opening in a silent scream. The wires between them glowed brighter, stretching, twisting, until he could see something flowing through them. Not light, not energy, but selves. Two lives trying to trade places. The hum rose to a pitch so high it felt like his skull would split. Somewhere above the chaos, her voice broke through. "Henry, stop, it's not me anymore." He tried to pull the plug, but his hands wouldn't move. His body wasn't his to command. The machine had taken over, binding him in the same loop the prison had been feeding for decades. The coils pulsed once, twice, then shattered, throwing him backward into the concrete wall. His head struck hard. The world blinked out. When he opened his eyes, the room was quiet. The other chair was empty. The machine smoked, dead. He looked down at his hands, smaller, softer, trembling. His reflection in the glass showed her face, not his. Her eyes filled with terror as realization sank in. He wasn't Henry anymore. He was her. A faint voice echoed from the other side of the room. His old body now breathing shallow, whispering words she couldn't unhear. Cycle complete, transfer successful. The countdown clock struck 0, and for the first time Henry, or what was left of him, smiled. Smoke coiled from the broken wires, painting the room in ghostly silver. The machine, once alive, now sat silent, but the hum hadn't stopped. It came from inside her, from Henry, from both. The air vibrated with the faint beat of a heart that wasn't human anymore. They looked around, dizzy, clutching the chair to stay upright. Every sound echoed seconds late. Every breath felt shared with someone unseen. In the cracked glass, Henry's old body stirred. Its eyes opened slowly, unfocused but aware. "It worked," it said through a voice too calm. "You brought her back." He, the real Henry, or what was left of him, stepped closer, face pale, smile trembling. But something was wrong. His movements were jagged, puppet-like. The shadows around him moved first, dragging his limbs behind. "You saved me," he whispered. "Now you can rest." She backed away, but the room had no door anymore, only the tunnel glowing faintly behind her. Each pulse from the machine made her memories flicker. The farm, the field, the laughter, the baby's cry. Then others, cold halls, steel doors, the first transfer, the warden's promise. The soul finds its own reflection. She realized the prison wasn't a building. It was a system, a loop, made to preserve, to repeat, to feed on unfinished grief. Henry's body took another step, eyes empty, mouth smiling wider. "Someone always has to stay," he murmured. The floor cracked beneath them, the walls bending inward. She ran, dragging herself through the tunnel, light chasing her heels. The whispers screamed now, thousands of voices, all saying her name, all with Henry's tone. "Return, return, return." She burst through the hatch into the open night. The prison was gone. In its place stretched endless desert, silent and starless. But the sand beneath her feet was moving, breathing. A faint heartbeat pulsed under the earth. It was still counting. It would never stop. The desert stretched forever, but the horizon glowed faintly. Not sunrise, not fire, but something in between. She stumbled across the sand, every step echoing like footsteps beneath the surface. The stars above flickered as though reflecting the pulse of the ground below. Each beat carried a whisper now softer, pleading instead of commanding. Finish the cycle, free the rest. She pressed her hands to her ears, but the voices came from inside, from Henry, from herself. She collapsed beside an old sign half buried in sand, the letters barely visible. Carson County Correctional Facility. The place hadn't vanished. It had sunk, buried under time, under guilt. She realized the truth she'd refused to see. The transfer didn't trap souls. It recycled them. Each victim became the next warden, each warden the next prisoner. And the machine didn't stop until someone broke the loop willingly. The cost was always the same. One had to remain. Wind whipped around her, carrying the scent of smoke and rain. In the distance, faint blue lights rose again from the desert floor, like lanterns calling lost travelers home. They formed a circle, pulsing with rhythm. As she stepped closer, faces appeared within the light, all the versions of Henry that had come before, hundreds of them, all waiting. Some smiled, some wept. One stepped forward, the first Henry, the one from the photograph. "It's never been about death," he said softly. "It's about memory refusing to fade." She looked down at her trembling hands, then at the sky where lightning stitched itself across the clouds like veins. The hum rose once more, steady and certain. She could feel the machine inside her, still alive, waiting for her decision. If she destroyed it, every soul trapped within would vanish. If she finished the cycle, they might finally rest. Her tears fell hot into the sand, hissing as they sank. She whispered, "Then let it end with me." The ground began to open. The lights turned red. The desert exhaled. The wind roared through the canyon of sand as the ground cracked beneath her feet. Light poured upward, not like fire, but like memory escaping. The blue lanterns spiraled into the air, each carrying a fragment of voice, of face, of moment. Every prisoner who had ever lived and died within Carson County's walls. The hum built to a single note that wrapped around her heart, neither pain nor peace, just release. She stood still, arms open, as if letting the storm pass through her. Her reflection appeared in the light one last time, Henry's face, calm now, eyes full of something softer than fear. "You did it," he whispered. "You stopped it." She reached out, touching the air where his cheek should have been, and for a moment the warmth returned. The desert began to still. The lights dimmed, sinking quietly back into the earth. The heartbeat that had echoed for nights finally faded into silence. The prison was gone. The machine was gone. All that remained was wind and stars, and one farmer's story buried beneath time. Weeks later, travelers crossing the Nevada desert reported strange things. A hum in the sand, faint shapes under moonlight, whispers asking not for help but for remembrance. Some swore they saw lanterns glowing faint blue near the old highway. Others said they heard someone repeating, "Return complete." None ever found ruins, just endless dunes that seemed to move when no one watched. Far away from there, a new field blossomed where nothing should have grown. Wildflowers covered the dry land in gold. Among them, a single tilted, half-broken signpost with words deeply engraved in the wood, "You must stay." And beside it, a pair of dusty boots pointed towards the horizon, empty but recently worn. The wind carried her voice one last time. "If you are listening, remember us. And if this story has reached you, let it stay with you just long enough to remind you that some places don't haunt us because they are cursed, but rather because they are waiting to be set free. So, if you were touched by this story, subscribe to the channel and don't let the light go out.